Welcome to Digital Hospitality. I am your host, Sean Walchef. This is a Cali BBQ Media production. Today we are here with Scott Yoffe of Yoffe Communications, and this is our public relations specific episode. I'm so excited, Scott, to talk to you today because of your history with the San Diego Chargers. You and I met actually when Cali Comfort Barbecue, we catered for the Chargers. We did one of the Friday practices. So Friday practice, after practice, we fed about 150 players, coaches, front office execs. John Spanos was kind enough to get us in on that catering gig, which getting a check from the NFL is one of our crowning achievements as a small business. But we met there and we've kept in touch, and I've been watching what you've been doing with your communications firm and your PR firm on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, and that led us to say, hey, let's sit down and talk and see what you're doing in 2020 and beyond. So welcome to Digital Hospitality.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here. It's funny. It's one of the few times I've heard somebody say they're excited to talk about public relations.
Well, I'm a strange bird, somebody that's in Spring Valley that's trying to turn our business into a media company. I think we've successfully done the turn now coming into 2020, and one of the things that we want to do every single week is teach other business owners how they can do the exact same thing, because there's something powerful that happens once you start thinking and acting as a small business, as a media company, because of what's happening with the cell phone, what's happening digitally. I mean, literally in 2017, on June 29th, 2007, excuse me. The reason I know that date, June 29th, 2007, that's when the first iPhone came out. I know that date because my son was born on June 29th, 2017. So I was looking up, well, what's happened on this day? And sure enough, 10 years earlier was the day that the first iPhone came out. And if you think back from 2007 to where we are in 2020, what we've done as a business, as a small business, to change and adapt with marketing, public relations, our brand, and doing it all digitally to where we are now in 2020. It's not just changed for us, it's even changed for NFL franchises.
100%. I mean, you have that landscape now. I mean, you never had this landscape before. You could share your own message. You always had to rely on other people.
Yeah.
Now if you have the power and the tools and the know-how to do it, you can tell your own story.
I think that's the powerful thing with what's happening with publishing now on the internet. And before the podcast started, we were talking about your training. Literally, your training, professional training in public relations. You said that a lot of the things that they asked you to do literally weren't applicable to your job, and that was back then.
Yeah, that goes back to college. I mean, I was a journalism major and thought I'd someday be a sports broadcaster or a news anchor or whatever. But they had to take a public relations class, and I just remember never understanding any of the stuff they had us doing, putting media kits together and all this stuff. It never really resonated and made any sense. And it took me till probably halfway through my Chargers career till the light finally kind of went on. I was like, oh wow, like I get it now. Like I understand what we're doing.
And when exactly was that? Was there a certain moment that happened?
Yeah, we kind of did. There was an aha moment. Because I think as I was telling you this earlier, is when you get into sports PR, you kind of get into this just like routine. It's when you're for example, an NFL guy, you get the game release goes out, the stats go out.
What day are we talking
about? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is early in the week is when your game release, you send out the stats.
And who are you sending these out to?
All the local media.
Okay.
So, you're writing the press release, it's going to the local media, it's going to the team that you're playing, it's going to the
national broadcasters. And by local media, we're talking about TV,
print, radio. So the guys who are coming out later in the week to interview
So people
players,
that are credentialed.
Correct.
So credentialed media are getting those releases.
Correct. They're getting those releases or getting those stats. And the idea is that they're getting them so when they come out to talk to the players later in the week after practice, they've got some notes and some things that they can refer to ask questions.
That are actually team generated, correct?
Correct. And yes, usually correct.
Usually correct, right?
And but pertinent to the game. But trust me, anytime there was something correct, your friend John he was good about correcting me if I had any mistakes.
Oh yeah.
In there, so. But no, just kidding. But so that's what you did. So you'd put that information out. But you get into that routine. You're putting out the release, the stats. You get the quarterback and the head coach to the podium. But where that kind of clicked in, this was probably mid 2000s. One of the years we were expected to get off to a good start, and for whatever reason, it seemed like year after year we never got off to a good start. we came back. We lost a game in Denver. I think we were 2-4 or 2-5 at the time. And while we were flying home, just trying to from Denver, just trying to think of, okay, what can we do differently? We've set these expectations that we're going to be good. We've struggled out of the gate again. So rather than just waiting for the media to come out on Monday to talk to the coach or on Wednesday to talk to the players, we thought, let's, instead of being reactive to the situation, let's be proactive. So I put a plan together where we got a series of different players, and over Monday and Tuesday we took guys out and we went in studio to the local TV stations and said, you know what, let's own the fact that we're 2-4 and let's be proactive and go out and tell our story, and maybe make it easier on those guys so they don't have to work so hard. Let's go out, let's bring something to them instead of having to put a 3 or 4 minute newscast together. Let's go out and put our players there and let's be upfront and honest. Say, look, we're not happy with where we are. We're disappointed. We're 2-4, but we're going to come back. We're going to work our tails off, and we're going to get this thing turned around and get it right. And you have a chance to control your own message when you do it that way. And instead of us not doing that, there would have been a newscast, and the new sports anchor, whoever that was, would have summarized. Scott Kaplan, Paul Rudy, Ben Higgins. They, it would have been their job to summarize how the team was doing. But instead, you have a chance to go out and tell your message and tell the public and the viewers, look, we're pissed that we're 2-4. And damn it, we're not happy with it. We're going to cut back to work on Wednesday and practice and meetings, and we're going to turn around and go out and win. It turned out to be, other than one station that somehow got missed because the guy driving him there, this must have been pre-Google Maps, couldn't find the station and missed the segment. But and all in all, I think it was really well received. And that was the first time I think it really kind of clicked in, and I understood that you could control the message and you didn't have to be reactionary.
And around what year was that?
Like I said, this has got to be, I'd have to go back and look, but I'd say it's like around the mid-2000s. I'd say around 2006, 2007.
Right around that iPhone release time.
Yeah, it was around that time, but it was around, like, it was in that period, that era we went through with the team where we were really good.
Sure.
And expectations were high, and it was just came out to be one of those years where we stumbled out of the gate.
I mean, I think that's one of the most fascinating things, just from a digital hospitality perspective, is that you're talking about we talk about it all the time in the restaurant as being proactive as opposed to reactive,
Sure.
and especially when you're controlling your messaging and your branding. But when you're talking about around 2007, this shift starts to happen. And I'm curious, how many PR executives are on a team? So,
like for us in San Diego, there was four. We had a 4-man team. Yeah.
Okay, 4-man team. And then how many in marketing?
It was probably double that.
Double that, so about 8 in marketing?
Yeah.
And then when did teams, the Chargers and specifically, start hiring for digital?
Well, so originally digital and website was run through our department. And
through PR.
Yeah, PR. Well, we had a guy in our department.
Fascinating.
2 people actually in our
So
department.
it was the web developer.
Yeah, the web developer, and then we had a web writer. And we didn't
the
even
web
have...
developer, was that a skeleton of, did the NFL say these are the standards and then you have to go off of them?
Originally, you did your own, and then they ultimately, what's the word I'm looking for? Not streamlined, but they went with a universal platform. So all the teams
it's like
basically...
an NFL WordPress.
Exactly.
So essentially, this is the landing pages you have to have, you're required to have.
Yes, and then you provide the content.
Yeah.
So we had a guy basically that managed the website, and then we had a full-time web writer. And we never even had anybody, for a long time, we didn't even have a video team. Like for years, I actually did a lot of our video.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it was fun though. I loved it.
Yeah.
I would do stand-ups. I'd do interviews with guys.
But think about how much you learned by doing that.
Oh yeah.
Right?
So, well, I finally, that was the first time was like my journalism degree became writing scripts and doing voiceovers and putting packages together. The first time I did it, actually, they sent me to the Pro Bowl in, I think it was around 2004 or 5. We had like 7 or 8 guys go. So they sent me out there to do stories, and I did a whole week of stories. I took I took Merriman up to Pipeline, and we did a story up there, and we just did a bunch of fun. Hannock Milligan was on the team. I actually did a story going around to all the Pro Bowlers, asking if they knew who Hannock Milligan was.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so great. So you're capturing this video content, and then where does it go?
We ran it on Chargers.com.
So you ran it on Chargers.com.
Yeah, so I put packages. I was out in Hawaii, and I'd just film them during the day with the guys, go back to my hotel room.
And this is
edit 'em,
obviously
and
pre-social media, the proliferation of
there was
Facebook, YouTube, and every other thing that we all know that you have to be on.
Yeah, this
now.
was strictly on Chargers.com.
Yeah.
It went no further than that.
Do you remember when you first got a Twitter account?
God, I'd have to go look and see what time, or on my account. Probably 2011, I think, is when it was.
And then when did the Chargers get their first Twitter account?
Oh, that's a good question. I got
Yeah.
no idea. Probably
who was
probably
responsible?
before.
Because that was the digital side.
Well, by
'Cause, I
then
mean,
we had-
I'm so curious because I've never even thought about this until we
Yeah.
had this conversation. But at some point, teams start to understand we have to start investing in digital,
Well, we did. They created a digital media department, which became a
which
totally separate
became
department.
they're
than, you know,
responsible for social media.
everything. Handled the website, social media. Ultimately, they actually took over filming and producing the team's TV shows.
Okay.
So like the last couple of years, like Jordan Bean and
Yep.
Ricky Henny, you saw them on the,
Oh yeah,
the
for sure.
Chargers shows.
Absolutely.
And they still do a lot of that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously I'm not there anymore, but I know they work with a local TV station in LA. But they do use some of their own people that are part of those shows.
Isn't it interesting just to see what happened in the last decade?
Yeah, well, everything's changed. The entire landscape of the business, the industry, and just like I say, controlling the message.
Controlling the message.
Plus, it's cost too. I mean,
Sure.
it's a lot. It becomes cost. As you know, from being it's expensive to create and produce and distribute. Content, TV, podcast content, whatever. So I mean, if you control some of those costs and bring it in house, save money on talent. If you use your own people, if you have your own in-house. Like we built a studio when we were here at Chargers Park, and we used to do.
When
a lot
was
of
that?
stuff.
Around what year?
That studio was only built pretty close to before we left. So I mean, that studio probably didn't get built till 2013 or 14, if I was to guess.
And that's probably the same time other teams in the NFL were doing it?
No, everybody kind of did it differently. I mean, there's some
differently.
teams that are a lot more sophisticated than others. Like the Patriots, I always remembered.
Oh, they're good at filming?
Yeah, they're good at. Imagine that, right?
Ironic.
I got a great filming story of the Patriots.
I'd love to hear it. Let's hear it.
So we're at this is great because you heard this just came out recently with the guy that got busted.
Yeah, with the Cincinnati
in the
Bengals.
Cincinnati game.
Yeah.
This story our guys never wanted to push this thing, but so we're back. We go to the AFC Championship game in 2007. This was when Rivers had his knee done.
Yep.
So we even walked through at the stadium the day before the game. So we pull up on Saturday for the walkthrough. It's not open to the media at all. Like no media is allowed there. So we pull up under the tunnel at Gillette Stadium. We get off the bus, and Phillips walk in our locker room, and there's a camera crew there. I mean, you got a camera guy, you got a light, you got a boom mic, and we're like, this ain't open to the public. And they're walking with him to the locker room, and the camera guy's holding the camera down at his knee level, and he's walking along.
No
with him.
way.
So I run up to him. I have him like, whoa, what are you guys doing? There's no media. He goes, the guy's answer, I'll never forget this. He goes, we're Kraft TV. We're an internal television production
way.
unit." That's the same
Come
Kraft
on.
TV that
Kraft
you heard
TV?
about. That's what they call themselves. Now, could you imagine had it been the other way around? We had a playoff game here in San Diego, and they show up at the queue, get off the bus, and they're walking down the tunnel, and you got a camera crew, and Belichick goes, hey, who are you guys? We're with Spanos TV.
Come on.
Could you imagine the uproar had that been the other way around? But our guys never, for whatever reason, they never.
So how does that how does that work?
So I finally just told them, you guys got to get the hell out of here. Like you're not allowed. This is closed. Like
So you saw it.
Oh,
You
I
asked
saw
the
it.
guy.
Yeah.
And then who do you go to?
I
You
didn't
go
go to
to
anybody.
Bill
I just told them to
Johnston?
get the hell out of there. I just took charge of it and
You
just
said
told them to get lost. Yeah, our guys saw
But
it.
as far as like reporting it to the league, because what the Bengals did, right? They
Yeah.
reported it to the league.
Well, and I mean,
and they had it on film.
that's what I thought we should have done. I thought
Right.
we should have made a bigger deal, but our guys, the administration, whatever, didn't want to.
Didn't want to make a fuss of it.
Yeah, exactly. So just
That's
let it go.
crazy. I
But
can't
yeah, that
believe
happened. I mean, that happened to us. This
They're
was
literally
2007.
they're
They've been
filming
cheating
his
for
injury.
years. Yeah.
Holy
So
shit.
yeah, that went on. It was crazy. Like I said, I told a couple people here and there, but that story bothered me for the longest time, just because like that was
Oh my God.
I worked for the team, but man, I cared. Like I was a
Well, yeah,
I was a
you're
fan. I mean, I
invested.
was invested. Like it wasn't just my job; it meant a lot to me. So I
Sure.
mean, here we are. I worked there. I started in '96, so here it's like 11 years later. Finally, get to an AFC Championship game. These guys are going to film our quarterback who just had his knee scoped 6 days ago. Like, get out of here.
Oh my
Can't do
God.
that. Yeah.
That is insane.
So yeah, that stuff happens.
I can't believe that. That's I mean that's a war story that I mean, you don't know until you're there, right?
Well, yeah, and it's
and
funny.
you don't know what
and
you're
I love the
do,
Patriots
because they
guys.
didn't teach you that. They didn't teach you that in school.
No, not at all. And I love the Patriots guys are great. Actually, I know
Yeah.
a lot of the guys that work there. They're great. But it's so funny because every time something comes up and I hear the name Kraft TV, you always hear
TV.
Kraft TV's always connected with the story. So I was like,
Wow.
oh man, I know those guys.
That's so amazing.
I swear to God, I'll never forget the guy. Tall guy with glasses. I mean, he just nicest guy in the world. But I was like, I mean, he literally is walking down the hallway under the stadium with his camera, like at Phillips' knee level. Like, what are you doing, man? You can't do that.
That's crazy. So part of your job while you're working for the Chargers and working for the NFL, I've heard you say on another podcast that your job is to maximize exposure and minimize liability, minimize and focus.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that everyone has a job to do. You obviously want coverage, and part of public relations is really you're doing long-term branding for the company. Marketing, you're typically marketing for a campaign, you're marketing for a shorter period of time, but public relations is forever.
Yeah, 100%.
So everything that you're doing is relationships-wise.
Well, and you're trying to, you said, you're trying to mitigate or limit those disasters. There's an old
Mitigate
saying,
disasters.
That's exactly what it is. And there's an old saying, like when you buy when you buy your ink by the barrel, every once in a while you're going to get excuse my language, you said you're going to get a shitty barrel every once in a while.
Barrel.
So your idea, in a perfect world, you want to eliminate that shitty barrel. So as much as you can continue to put out positive messages and control the message that's going out, it gives people that are covering the team less reason to go look for negative stories.
Absolutely.
So I mean that's a big part of getting to know the players and look for these good human interest stories, because if you're constantly feeding stories that make it easier on them to come out, when I say them, the media, to come out and do their jobs, if you give them something to talk about, they're less likely to spend the time going digging through a guy's background to see if there's something that bad that happened or something he did wrong to talk about. So that's where you can control that message.
Well, I'd love to hear your opinion, because we're very fortunate that we've become friends with a lot of local radio talent, people like Dave Palais and Jeff Dotseth, and they've talked about obviously covering the Chargers and going to training camp and doing all these things. And one of the things that they've talked about on their podcast is they had specific conversations with Dean about why aren't they sending out more messaging and more public relations about all the good work that the Chargers did in the community. And it was always something that it was more, yes, we did the blood drive, yes, we did certain things in the community, but it was never something that was celebrated as much as they felt it should be. What is your opinion about that?
I don't know. I mean, being that I sat in that seat, I like to think that we did do a pretty good job of putting out information, and we made sure that we pushed that.
It's tough too with charity, because charity, you want to do charity for the right reasons, right? You're not doing charity for the public relations. You're doing charity because it means something to the core of your mission.
100%. And we did a lot of great programs. We did programs with the schools for years. We, various youth groups, Pop Warner. I mean, the team still sponsors the high school all-star game that was here. So I mean, I don't know. I would probably take exception to that comment, because I do think we did a good job. But again, that's a part of what you do. So you can't necessarily talk about that and promote that stuff 365 days a year. Now, if you want me to say where there was a failing, I wish we would have gotten more mileage out of maybe guys like Dean promoting actually his own role and promoting what he was actually doing, because he never wanted to be. He wasn't a guy that wanted to be out front.
He wasn't a Jerry Jones character.
No, he wasn't. Yeah. And, I think if you look back in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, I mean, I think that could be a contributing factor to why things are where they are right now, because I think had people seen a little more of that, I mean, he did a lot of great things. They spent a lot of money, doing things in the community, but I think had people, seen, had he been more out front, I think people might have felt differently when push came to shove and came time to make decisions on like stadiums and things like that. So who knows? I mean, that's water under the bridge at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the stadium issue has been exhausted by every media outlet there is. And
that story's
I think we've lived that ourselves. At what point did you decide that working in the NFL and working for the Chargers was no longer going to be what your life passion was going to be?
As soon as Dean walked into that room that day on whatever January 4th or 3rd, whatever it was, and said, we are now the Los Angeles Chargers. I knew that day I was done. Yep. So, I mean, my wife's got to be honest with you, my wife's got a good job down here. We got a house. I got a son who's now 9. spent, more than half my adult life down here, built a network, and when I was laying in bed at night, toss and turn, am I going to go, am I going to stay? The one thing that kept me up at night was, where are we going to live? How much traffic am I going to have to sit in to get to and from work every day? And how much of my kid's life am I going to miss going, as I'm doing this? And
you've already missed significant because of the job that you're in.
I did, but it wasn't. My last year or two was when he got a little bit older, and I used to do our travel coordinating. So if we play a road trip, if the team was leaving Friday, I would fly out a day or two before, and I would go out and set up all the logistics on the road for the team and be there when they arrived. So my wife and son used to take me to the airport, and the last couple of years, my son would start to cry every time I'd go to the airport. And that's when it really kind of hit home, and it was like, it got harder and harder. And I loved what I did when I was younger and single, and you're living kind of that rock star lifestyle. You're flying on charter planes, you're riding the games on buses with police escorts. You got a credential everywhere you go. Staying in nice hotels. You're kind of living that rock star life, but there's another side to it. And I pretty much knew that as soon as he said that, I was staying. And, it changed a little bit. There were a couple of things that happened, that some conversation about potentially going, but basically I had made up my mind that day.
You knew in your heart that
we were going.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, there are, look, these jobs are hard to come by. There's probably 3 to 4 guys per team. There's 32 teams, so there's 90 to 100 of these jobs. Guys don't walk away from NFL PR jobs, and I loved what I did. I mean, it wasn't just a job. I mean, there you go back through my feed. I mean, I'm a guy that's standing on the goalpost and running out on the field after made field goals to win the game. I mean, I was notorious.
You wear your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah, guys didn't want to shake my hands after the game, after a win, because I'd come in, I'm high-fiving guys like crazy. Like, I cared. Like, I wanted us to win. I mean, it meant a lot to me. So it was hard to walk away. It's still hard. I mean, it's a couple of years later, and I don't miss the day-to-day grind because, things have turned out really well. I've been very fortunate. Get to spend a ton of time with my family. I mean, I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. Just a better person overall for the experience. But I still miss it. It's hard this time of year watching the playoffs because football is a moment's business.
Yes.
If you think about it, we work, most people work 5 days a week. So they work about 250, 260 days a year. When you're in the NFL, man, you probably work 7 days a week during the season. You got stuff goes on in the offseason. You probably work 330 or so days a year. You think about it, you get, just counting the regular season and the preseason, you get 20 games. They're 3 hours apiece. That's 60 hours of football. So if you think about it, you're working 330 days a year for 2.5 days worth of football.
Wow.
So you better damn well love it if you're going to put that kind of commitment in.
I've never heard it broken down like that.
It is, and when you think about it, it's crazy to think. But what I enjoyed the build-up. I liked practice on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Fridays when the network guys would come in, you'd get the Jim Nances, and back in the days, the Pat Summeralls and the John Madds, the Al Michaels. I grew up idolizing those guys because I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. So I'd sit in those rooms and listen to the production meetings. You take the ride down to the visiting team's hotel to drop off credentials and flip cards, Saturday walkthrough, and then just that ride into the stadium on Sundays was, so I enjoyed all of it, the build-up. The games, to be honest with you, they came and went so fast, it wasn't so much the games themselves, but it was just everything else that was around it. But it's a moment's business. And you kind of, that's why you see like rock stars go through so many, personal travails.
Sure.
Because it's like you're trying to replicate that high, constantly.
Yeah, so we had Nick Hardwick on the podcast, and he went through his own crisis that he's been very public about. Thankfully sharing, his deepest, darkest moments.
Yeah, I went through a lot of it with him. I was there when he went through it, and Nick's still a good friend of mine. And it's hard. It is. Football, for whatever reason, unlike any other sport, is just so difficult to walk away from because of those. It's moments, it's the structure. There's just so much that goes into it that there's nothing outside of there that can replicate it. You can play baseball, you could go and play rec league softball and replicate it. If you play basketball, you can still go play at the Y, get into a run. You can go up to UCLA and run at the Wooden Gym up there and get a run that's just as good as what you'll see at Staples Center. But football, there's nothing like that.
Correct.
So when you're done, it's a hard adjustment, and it's gotten better. I'm certainly better. I try to go paddleboarding on Sundays now, so I don't have to sit in front of the TV.
There you go. Yeah.
My wife, she's
otherwise you'd be there. You'd be there for 3 games.
Exactly.
Well, the duration of 3 games,
pretty much,
is the entire Sunday.
I actually stopped playing fantasy football up until this year, until I got recruited back into play again.
Oh, there you go.
So I get into it a little bit. It's still, I love the game still, but it's hard because I was in it for well over 400 games.
Yeah. So tell me about your new communications and PR firm and what you're doing to help your clients?
Yeah.
And why is it important that small businesses, mid-sized businesses understand public relations?
Well, I think what I'm helping, just to kind of dumb it down, is I help my clients with earned media. And when I say earned media, that's getting them on radio, that's television, newspaper stories, web stories told about them. There's been, as we kind of talked about off the top, there's such a transition now to everything is, so much stuff is done digitally. A lot of businesses have gotten in this mode where, okay, we're just going to advertise our business on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We're going to do banner ads. And at some point, people become tone deaf to those things.
Yes.
And you can't strictly rely on, business, but I think a lot of people have kind of gotten used to thinking that that's the new way of doing business now. But it's not. You still have to, you've got to have a balance of what you're doing. You've got to be able to offset that with earned media, which is, like I said, radio, TV, and print, where you can have opportunities for somebody to go out and tell your story about what you're doing. And
I like that earned media, and especially when it gets to the core of what you've talked about, which is relationships.
Sure.
It's one thing to get invited to go and do a news segment on KUSI and for us to go and promote our barbecue. It's another thing for us to go and build a relationship with Tommy Sablon, who's the producer, and then build a relationship with the anchors, and then know that we're going to feed all the camera crew and everyone else. Now we've built a deep relationship with our brand, what we do, and that's what you're doing for your clients.
Sure. And
it's an exponential value.
100%, and it's not just you going to KUSI. What about when they come to your place and they get there and they do the story here? Now they're coming out and telling your story here.
Correct.
So that's what it's all about. It's creating those opportunities, and a lot of it comes down to relationship building. I mean, I spend a lot of time sitting in front of a computer, just doing outreach, meeting with people, talking with people, because you're relying on those relationships to get these stories done. I'm actually in the process of going through a series now of going out and visiting with all the TV stations, just the folks there, just because I don't ever want to get stale. And I don't want to just strictly rely on me just being, the former Chargers PR guy. Like, you constantly have to get out, go to lunch with people, have coffee, stop by and visit with them, make sure you're still talking to the right people, because there's a lot of turnover and change. But you can't just sit behind a keyboard and do this. You actually have to get out and shake hands and talk to people. And
you're absolutely right.
Because you got to have those relationships, because when you're in a pinch and you need a favor, you got a client that you need to get a story for, it's a lot easier to do that when you know the person on the other end of the phone, and you pick up the call or call them on their cell phone and they answer on the first ring and say, hey, yeah, no problem, whatever you need, I'll do that for you.
Yeah, and I think that gets into the heart of what we talk about every week on digital hospitality, is that it's an ecosystem. Like, literally, the hospitality part is the in-person part, and the in-person part is where all the magic happens.
Sure.
But you have to also have that digital part where you're actually still, we wouldn't be sitting here podcasting today if you hadn't reached out, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And those are those digital communications where you're literally top of mind. There's a book by John Hall that we highly recommend, which is Top of Mind, and it's incredible in the day and age that we live in, with the type of earned media that you can get and the type of relationships that you can build if you're paying attention.
Sure.
But people aren't just going to think of you just to think of you.
No.
Like, you have to be doing the right things at the right time. It's back to the timing. If you're not at the epicenter of where this stuff is happening, chances are that deal's going to go to somebody else.
Yeah,
right?
No, you're right. And I had to go out and reestablish a lot of these relationships myself, because, again, it was kind of built in at the Charter. If we had a press release, we signed a player, I just sent it out. I didn't have to worry about pitching it to anybody. I just knew that release was going to be picked up. I don't have that luxury anymore. And furthermore, as we had gotten good, we had a small, we could never accommodate everybody. So it got to a point where we had to start telling some of the people that maybe cover some of the blogs and smaller outlets and publications, we started telling them no. We didn't have a very good relationship when I was at the team. Like, there were a couple of local publications that we basically, for one reason or another, they, wasn't, when I say we, it was kind of a team thing, but stopped granting them access. So when I got out, I had to go back out and reestablish these relationships with them and make sure that they understood this wasn't Scott Yoffe's decision. This was, you work for the team and you're a team guy. So, but I, fortunately, this isn't wood, but knock on wood, I've been able to kind of reestablish those relationships. And for the clients that I've got locally in town, I've gotten fantastic coverage for them, and hopefully it continues, because I love what I'm doing now. It's a lot of fun, and I value even coming and sitting here, I will never, ever again not that I ever did before, but I value every word of coverage, every line,
Yes.
every word in a story that's written or told about my clients, because I understand now how hard it is to get that kind of coverage, and how lucky we were because we had it built in when I was in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's something I appreciate you saying that, because one of the things I never knew anything about PR until we had run our restaurant for 5 years. And at 5 years, I felt like that was such a huge achievement for us, in Spring Valley, in East County, to like survive for 5 years. And I thought, oh, somebody's certainly going to cover it. Maybe the newspaper, maybe no one gives a shit.
No, they don't.
Once I realized that no one gave a shit, that the only person that gives a shit is me, the business owner,
Yeah.
well, I better produce it myself. That's when I started being more proactive in building those relationships. And then sure enough, 5 years later at our 10-year anniversary, we didn't do any press release, we did nothing, but we literally shut the restaurant down for a night, and we took all of our staff to a Gulls game. But because we had so many relationships, we sent out a tweet that was retweeted by all the media. So literally we got more media out of a tweet than we did out of anything we would have had to pay for. But that was a lesson that I learned that took 5 years to learn.
Sure.
You
didn't have Scott Yoffe Communications
I
back
didn't.
after
I
that
didn't.
5 year mark.
I
We
didn't.
could have done that sooner.
we could have done that sooner.
We're going to work
quicker.
on that, though. We're going to blow you guys up even bigger.
No, I appreciate that, and that's one of the things I think I had to get out of my own way as a small business owner, in knowing that I can't do everything myself, even though I think I can do everything myself. And once you start building a network of relationships of people that are highly skilled in what they do, like our gentleman here from Blue Vision, I let them do what they do. I let Stover, my producer in Portland, produce the podcast. I let Kyle run our website so that we're creating mobile first content, and the podcast is there, the blog is there, that the stuff gets published on YouTube. Once I get out of my own way, then I can start really driving the business, is what every business owner's goal is.
Well, it's like I hate to use this word, but it's almost like an addict. Like, you can't get help until you realize you need some
Correct.
help. And you realize like, I got to put some people around me to help me get these things and grow. Because you're right. I mean, you've been fortunate, but not every business can do what you've done.
Yes.
Sustain for 5 years and then grow. You need help. You need people around you. And what I found is interesting, and it's been good for me, is a lot of smaller companies, private companies, they tend to, public relations for whatever reason, is I don't know that
It's
they
not top of mind.
understand the value. Yeah.
It's
So
not
a
top
lot of
of
times
mind.
what they'll do is they'll hire like a director of marketing, and the director of marketing is responsible for anything marketing, public relations, community relations, social media, digital media. One person can't
You
do
can't
all
do
that.
it. You can't do it.
Where I've been fortunate is there are some companies that realize, we've got to get some help and get some earned media, and kind of steer some of the messaging, and that's been good for me, and hopefully it continues to
Well, I
to
think
grow.
I think these conversations are exactly the things that are going to help that, because companies are start to realize that having a company like Scott Yoffe Communications and Cali Barbecue Media, not only are you getting earned media, but you're getting media that's going to be evergreen on your website.
Sure.
That you get to use for all your social media channels. And that's one of the things that's the most empowering for me, that what we've learned how to do is not just get that earned media, but learn how to capture it in a way that we can use it for all of the social media platforms, which is where everyone has to be anyways.
Yeah,
correct?
well, I told you, I was, when we first started chatting, I was impressed, because think how many years you've been out and doing events, and now you're not only going out and serving barbecue at an event, but now you're capturing that on video, that you're not only sharing on your own channels, showing people, hey, we're out catering events and we're doing big time things, but your clients can go show that now on their channels. So when they're going out and trying to, pitch to sponsors and get other supporters for their, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit business, they can take that video and be, hey, take a look, here's something we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's the magic of what's happening, and that's what gets me the most excited about 2020 and beyond, is that there's a high level game, high stakes game that's happening, and the people that start to partner up and start to do things are going to do some really cool things for companies and allow them to really perpetuate their message. That's my general manager, Eric, coming in to get some work done.
I'm going home, actually.
Oh, you're going home?
He's going to the Gulls game.
He's going to the Gulls game.
He's got his quarter zip on.
Yeah,
we don't
edit the podcast. Yeah. This is real life, real life. But yeah, no, I think exactly what's happening in 2020, and having these conversations is what's important.
Well, if you think about it, the calendar just turned to 2020, and on New Year's I was actually sitting with my 9-year-old, and I was thinking, God, I was born in '72, so I'll date myself, but when you go 72 to 90 to the 2000s, you remember when you would used to think, God, what's the world going to be like?
Oh my gosh.
In 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, think of all the.
It was so far away.
I think I mean, in
I was born in
1990, I
'82.
still get up and or we had one of those remote controls, but you used to click it to get the channel to change.
Yeah.
I mean, but think about how much it's grown in 30 years from now. I mean, hopefully I'm still here, but at that point my son will be close to 40. What's the world going to be like for him? What's the technology going to be like? And it's crazy.
My son is 2 years and 7 months old. He will watch limited YouTube of monster trucks, which he absolutely loves, but he already knows the skip feature for the content that's getting pushed to him.
Oh yeah.
So there's the advertisement from Google that's coming up,
Sure.
and he doesn't want it.
So
he goes, no, he doesn't want his content interrupted. So he already knows where the button is. I'm
yeah.
But that's the world that we live in.
100%. My kid's 9, and he can work an iPhone better than my wife.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely.
Navigates around. He helps her with problems with the phone and the computer. I mean, he's.
Speaking of the phone, the one thing I do want to ask you about is I know that you guys, the phone was very important in your training for players, right?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
About just talking that everybody has a phone?
Oh, well, yeah, that part of it. Yeah, so we did, what we used to tell people, or tell the players especially, was when we were helping with our media training, is just when you're out in public, just be careful. Because, the world changed when phones came out with cameras on them. Because now you could be out in a public place and somebody shoots a video of you and they can put it on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, and now they're like a member of the media.
Yep.
So I mean, we used to tell them everybody that's got a camera phone
TMZ
is
built
a
their
member of the
business
media.
on
100%.
built their business.
So
on
that's what we that was always part of the lesson. Engagement and we always wanted them to be engaged with the fans because that's how you build support and relationships. But my always famous saying was, "When in doubt, don't tweet it out." So that was what
when in doubt, don't tweet it out. Yeah, for sure.
And I still live by that mantra too. I mean, there's times, trust me, I'm sitting there watching a game like, oh man, I want to tweet something right now.
It's a loaded gun.
Yeah, bite your tongue. Yeah, put your phone down.
Correct.
Put your phone down, pick up the remote.
Well, the internet's forever. Whether you delete it or not, it's there forever.
Yeah, it lives. Nothing goes away. So, but yeah, I mean, that was kind of a big lesson for them, and that was more just for off the field, because look, these are regular guys. We don't expect them to. We knew they weren't just going home and sitting home and eating TV dinners at night. We know they were going out and hanging out, but just got to be careful of who you surround yourself with, because you're a high value target, and people are glam onto you and want to be around you when you're out. And that's not necessarily even in a bar. It could be at a restaurant while you're out eating dinner. But and that's for everybody. I mean, think how many videos go out now of just common people. You'll see two people fighting on a.
I just put out a video on Instagram stories of us getting ready for the podcast. I mean, that's the world we live in.
Yeah. So I mean, everybody now, technically everybody's like a member of the media.
Yeah.
Because it is, our society is so much social media driven.
Social media, digital media. Yeah, I mean, that's.
Look at our president. He's managing the country on Twitter.
Correct. I know.
And
correct.
He's fighting a war with Iran on the Twitter right now. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It is crazy, and I mean, one of the things that I would love for you to give a business owner some sort. Where do you start when you're thinking about public relations? Like when you meet with a client, how do you do your assessment of what exactly their goals are for earned media?
I think it's understanding what their message is and what their story is. I'll give you an example. Like I've got a client that's they're Vet TV. They're one of my newer clients. They are the founder and CEO is a retired Marine captain, was a wounded warrior, and they started a TV channel, a streaming video channel where they produce short segment TV shows. They just did a feature film, their first one, but everything they do is very dark and irreverent humor. And when I say dark and it's offensive for a lot of people. And to be honest with you, when they were talking to some PR agencies, there were some that didn't want to touch them. And when I sat down with them, the one thing that really kind of resonated with me is that the guy who founded and started the company, he also started a foundation called Irreverent Warriors, which they go and they host these silkies hikes where guys walk around in silkies and they do these long hikes carrying rucksacks. And the idea of the Irreverent Warriors Foundation is that their mission is to prevent veteran suicide. So when you really dive into the deeper message of what these guys are doing, you realize, okay, that you understand a little bit.
You understand the core of their
why. So
why.
it helps to kind of understand the message of what their story is that they're trying to tell. So when I'm going out and pitching media outlets to do stories about them, it makes it easier when you understand the story. Because you can't just, like if you're just serving barbecue, that's not a story. But when there's a story of now, like take you for example, like you not only have a restaurant, but you built this into a media business. You have relationships with all the professional sports teams in town. You go out and you do events. There's a story there. Because so that's, I think, really the first step is kind of learning about the client, what their story is and what the message is that they want to get out. And then that evolves over time as new things happen. You may go through new hires. You may add a new, right now you've got the podcast, you've got the video component that you do. You may add something new, and that becomes newsworthy too.
So one of the things that, it's one thing to get, so you pitch the news outlets, right?
Sure.
And then you get somebody to say, yeah, this is great. We'd love to have your client come in. What do you do on the coaching front to get them ready for their actual on-air appearance?
Fortunately, there's not a ton of coaching. It's different than the NFL because they know what their story is and that their message is. Football is different because, football players, I guess, were kind of cut from a different mold because if you think about it, a baseball player wears a uniform with a hat on, and you can see his face.
Like an NBA player.
He's identifiable.
Sure.
A basketball player is the same way. A football player is clothed in this gigantic uniform. Most of the time he wears a helmet. So to be honest with you, 53 guys on a football team, you might walk down the street. They all 53 might walk by you. You might only notice 2 of them think, oh, that guy's a football player. So I think it was a kind of getting them, for us with the players, it was getting them out of the helmet and getting them comfortable and talking and telling their stories. When you're working with a client now, like I don't necessarily have to coach them up so much because they know their story. Where I'll prep them is just, kind of, hey, these are some of the, if it's a TV interview, just these are some of kind of the questions to expect.
Well, there's 2 parts of the prep because there's the client prep, but there's also the prep that you're trying to essentially negotiate with the producer, right?
Sure.
Because
you're trying to shape the story.
You're trying to shape the story how you want it, and the producer, they have their job, and then the on-air talent also has their job.
Yeah.
So a lot can happen from
what
you send out.
Game.
Yeah, exactly. What you send out saying, "Hey, this is what we want to talk about," to once they're actually live on TV and they have their 2 to 5 minutes to.
Yeah.
And that's generous, 2 to 5 minutes.
In all honesty, a lot of the coverage nowadays tends to be more written and online type coverage. So it's, I'm really more able to shape the pitch, I think, in the original email, kind of base that on that. And that, even with TV, it's the same thing. I mean, I have I go through and put a pretty comprehensive pitch together. And even in conversations leading up to it, you kind of steer toward, what's the story and just making sure that that they're telling the story right as you want to tell it. Because like with us, I mean, it could go with Vet TV, for example, it could go one of 2 ways because they could either understand the message and why you're producing the content you're doing, or they can look and be like, oh, well, this stuff is offensive, and, they could rip you for it. So we try to shape, for them specifically, we try to shape the story of all the good that they're doing and building a community among veterans and the stuff they're doing, the suicide prevention awareness and all that. And that's, you kind of try to steer the story that way.
And when you're working with clients, do you prefer to work with the owner or their team, their board of directors, their marketing department, or are you really working in an ecosystem that's each client's unique?
Yeah, really each client is kind of unique. And most of the companies I work for, either if they're small companies, I tend to work with, they're 3 or 4 people who I typically work with directly. I've got a couple of national clients where I tend to work with 1 or 2 people who will have an internal department, but they use external agencies like mine to help them offset some of the media on the outside. So it really kind of varies company to company. But I'm a people person. I as I've said, before, this is all about relationships. So I'm not one to be like, oh, I don't want to work with that guy. Like, I'll work with anybody. I mean, it's not going to get any worse. I dealt with 53 guys or 90 guys in a locker room during training camp. It's not going to get any harder.
Yeah,
than
exactly,
that. So
right. Cutting down from 90 to 53. That's if you want to know how that goes, watch Hard Knocks.
Exactly.
You can see the people's hopes and dreams get crushed on real TV.
You haven't lived until you've had to walk up to a 300-pound offensive lineman buck naked and tell him that Jenny from Channel 8 outside wants to talk to her on camera.
Yeah,
right? Let me get some clothes on. I'll get right back to you on that one.
For sure.
You've seen it in the locker room. I mean, well, you don't see it on TV, but games are terrible because if you get a star player, a guy that has a big game, guy gets out of the shower, he just wants to get dressed. Well, he's getting dressed, and you've got a horseshoe of 20 media people standing. I used to happen like the LT all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And Gates, because Gates was always one of the last guys to come out. I'd feel terrible. This guy played a game, just got out of the shower, like, he ain't leaving. Let him get dressed and then come on over. But so I would say, hey, all right, guys, take a step or two back. Let the guy get dressed, and they take a half step back. Like, come on, let the guy.
Were there certain numbers of credentials that were allowed for the NFL or for Chargers internally? It wasn't
really a limit.
It was your own.
Yeah, I mean, our own discretion, basically.
Because there's no limit at the Super Bowl, right?
No, well, there is. I mean, they don't
There has
credential
to be
everybody,
something.
but yeah, there's some rhyme or reason when it comes to it. But I mean, those scrums are, and I get it, because when you've got the TVs and you've got 4 or 5 cameras there, they all want to get the best, shot angle, and they don't want to give up their space. But it's I could never do that. Like, I'd run and hide, man. Maybe I'm too self-conscious at just, having to get dressed in front of 15 people like that. But it was a weird deal.
Did you have any mentors that taught you what was the right thing to do and not the right thing to do?
Not really any mentors. You just kind of learn as you go. I mean, I worked for Bill Johnston. He was like my dad. Still is like a father. I mean, I spent time with. I worked for him for 21 years, so I spent more time with him than I did in my own house growing up. So I learned a lot from him, just about kind of the demeanor of how to handle people and kind of how to mitigate controversial situations, because we had them. It's a lot. What I do now is way different than. But I mean, in football, you're in a competitive environment. It's very emotional. Guys are playing for their jobs and their livelihoods every week. I mean, the one thing of football is, baseball, basketball, even hockey, all these contracts are guaranteed. But in football, these guys sign contracts. They get paid every Monday or Tuesday, whatever the day was. But you only get the season 17 weeks. So if you got $1 million contract, that contract is broken up into 17 weeks. So in a lot of cases, if you're a younger guy that doesn't have a guaranteed, you haven't reached a level where you're guaranteed, you only get 1/17 of that money every week. So if you get cut after week 4, if you have a bad game, you're cut. Well, you don't see that rest of that money just kind of disappears into thin air. So it's a volatile, it's a hostile environment. It's competitive. I mean, you've got 53 guys, and you're one injury away from a guy being replaced. Or you hear the famous stories of multiple guys. Even Nick you talk about Harvick, he used to tell the story. It's like, the minute they drafted me, there was a whole staff of like 15 scouts trying to find the next one of me. And that's how.
And that's how he felt.
Yeah, that's how it was. I mean, and it's not just football, but all sports are like that. And so it's emotionally charged and whatnot. But so you try to mitigate that best you can.
Do you have any tips or hacks for somebody that you would advise a client? Anything that you tell them to do when they sign up with your services that you think is something that's valuable? I mean, one thing that I tell lots of business owners that I'm surprised they don't do is sign up for Google alerts for at least their brand, at least their competition, at least their industry, so that literally Google's going to tell you what's being published on the internet about your name, your business, or your brand, or your competitor. Then you can start to say, well, why are they in the news all the time and why aren't we?
Yeah, I think my kind of message are, what I want to make sure with my clients is that they're going to be accessible and available, because you never know when you're going to get a story opportunity.
Yes.
So I think that's important, to make sure that they're going to be accessible and reachable. The other one too that I got, and I'll use the guys at Vet TV again because they're a good example of it, is there's controversy to what they do. I just wanted to make sure that they'd be willing to stand up and answer the tough questions, and they've been great about that. And that's something that I really enjoy, because that was, coming from football, we didn't always have guys that wanted to answer the tough questions.
Yes.
It was easier just if guys coming off a bad
easier
game
to
and they
decline
wanted to
the
put him,
comment.
it's easier to say, you know what, I'm not going to talk to the media today. And we dealt with a lot of that. A guy drops a pass or whatever, has a bad game, has a bad day, doesn't want to talk to the media. You got to own up to it. I mean, that's why I respect when you'll see a guy that, when you watch some of these games where you see a kicker that missed 3 field goals in a game, but still he's going to man up and go talk to the press after the game. I mean, even the guy in Cleveland that, admittedly, I didn't, what was the guy's name that in the Pittsburgh game when he kicked the quarterback, Randolph?
He kicked
but I didn't care for his messaging, for what he said afterwards, but at least he made
least
up.
He said something.
He talked, yeah.
Correct.
And I think there's something to be said for that. So, but I think nowadays the clients I work with, they understand the value to me that they have to talk. I mean, that's their, I'm not there. There's no reason to have me if they're not going to, be willing to tell their story.
Do you believe that the only bad press is no press? Do you believe in P.T. Barnum's
No, I don't
principles,
think there's,
or
I
do you
don't
think there is?
this,
Having lived in bad press, do you think that there is bad press?
there's no such thing as bad press, because anytime press, look, like I said, it's that old saying, you're never, when you buy your ink by the barrel. But look, I always tell my clients, look, when you're getting a story written about you, that means your competition's not being written about. So
Yes.
look at it that way. And I tell them, you have a chance to control the message. So when you're out there talking, you don't control the question. There's this, we tell them, or I tell them, you don't control the question, but you control the answer. So if you
Yes.
think about that, you don't necessarily have to answer. They can ask the question,
good-
but you
that's a
can
great-
answer it
that's a
however you
great
want.
tip.
I mean, it really is.
That's a
And I
great
tell
tip.
guys all the time, because I've learned. We dealt with this with the players, but even I use this now in
That is a
my
great,
life.
great
It is.
tip.
Yeah, you'll remember that one.
No, for sure.
Because
Because that's the honest truth.
sure, because you can't stop them from asking a bad question if there's a bad question, but you can certainly spin the answer however you want.
That's correct.
So
Yeah, and I
that'll
think
be my lesson to you you learn something new every day.
hey, I mean that's one of the reasons why we love podcasts, is it allows our listeners, other business owners, people that are listening to the show, it gives you a seat at the table that hopefully allows them to implement the things that we're talking about and save themselves some headache down the line.
Yeah, sure. And that's not just media. That's in anything. You can get a client that, you get a customer that, asks you a question they're not happy with. Something. You don't control the question, but you can certainly control what the answer is.
Every 1-star review that's ever been written on Yelp about us, I control what we say in response to that review.
Absolutely.
And whether somebody reads just the angry review or they read my response, at least I'll have a response that I'm comfortable with, because that's my voice.
Well, and what's great is, like you just said, you'll respond. And that's
Yes.
You've got to be willing, and it's like we were just talking about, you got to be willing to answer the tough questions. So I'd work with a guy like you, because you're willing to answer the tough questions.
Answering the tough question, well, that's when you fight for press and you fight for media as much as we have to keep our doors open and to be in business, we realize how great of an opportunity we have now, that I can send a tweet, I can publish a podcast, I can write a blog, I can do all these things in my own voice. Plus, I can leverage the relationships and work with someone like you to amplify that message. Really amplify that message in a way that allows us to reach people all over the globe. If you have the access to the internet, you have access to niche information about your business, about your brand, about what you care about.
It's limitless now. It's wild when you think about it. I mean, it's shrunk the world so much from whatever existed before.
I mean, my grandfather was born in a village in Portum, Bulgaria, where he was literally built to be a farmer. The only reason he was able to elevate himself was because his grandfather taught him how to read, and that love of reading allowed him to read every single book in that village, where he had to get to another village so that he could get access to more books.
Now, if he was still living there, he was a Belkin router away from being able to watch this podcast.
Correct. That is the magic. And my wife is Bulgarian. She Skypes with her family for free every day. But a kid in the same village could have access to a Harvard education just by living in that same village. And that's the thing that's exciting. We're very honored that you came and spent time with us today. How can people find you?
Mostly, I actually don't. This is terrible. I don't have a website, so I use my social media.
Well, we're going to get you dialed in. We're
going
to get you guy. We got a guy.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Scott Yoffe Communications. It's and it's YOFF like Frank, E like elephant. So Scott Yoffe Communications.
Perfect. Well, we're going to put everything we talked about today in the show notes. Stover does a great job of doing that. We're going to get Kyle Pfluger to help you get that website launched, mobile first website. But yeah, we're grateful that everyone that listens to the podcast, please check out. We're going to do a behind the scenes video of Scott in action with his client. That's yet to be determined, but it'll be on our YouTube page. So subscribe to that. Thank you guys for listening to the show, and thank you for spending time with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to come out and talk about what I'm doing, and I'm glad we kept the relationship going, and I'm glad I'm still here.
Oh yeah, wait till you see the big things that we're both able to accomplish together.
Love it.
All right.